So I mean, anyway, Jumbo Visma. When you look at it, 59 victories so far, and this, I'm sure there's going to be more in the Vuelta Espana coming up. The GC as well. Peak Quickstep, I would probably say, had 70 wins, but that didn't include multiple stages in the Tour de France, multiple stages in the Vuelta. Well, multiple, but like a Vuelta, a Giro, a Tour in there. Are Jumbo too strong for the sport? I mean, Formula One, you always talk about like the dominance killing the sport, but yeah, okay. Let's just say it as well. Sepp Kuss, best domestique in the world. Primoz Roglic, multiple Vuelta España winner. Podium on every single Grand Tour. Jonas Vingegaard, the two-time Tour de France champion. So it's not like it's just random riders. It is the creme de la creme that he kind of brought to this team. And like we said, there's only really Tadej Pogačar who we think, could fight these guys, considering Remco Evenepoel had his off day. Ayuso's like 21, one Welter under his belt. So are they too strong, and is it bad for the sport when we consider the overall picture that they're dominating everything, winning the Tour of Britain, winning the Vuelta España? Okay, they didn't win the Montreal and Quebec race, but they came close almost with Laporte.
I've got to admit, I am not enjoying Jumbo Visma's dominance in the sport right now. I think I'm not the only one saying that. I've seen that dotted around quite a lot. And you know what? I had the same opinion when Sky were doing it back in the 2010s before people decided to go and rebuttal me with that in the comments section. I see you all there, ready with your comments. Right. I thought exactly the same there. I just don't like it when there's dominance by one team. And I think the fact that, yeah, Jumbo would just have just been so dominant, I don't really like it. Is it bad for the sport? I don't know. I think it's a bit of both. I think it's not good because it's just like a clean sweep by one team. In a lot of cases, the one respite being that Wout van Aert doesn't win as many one-day races as perhaps he should do. That's something. But it's also good because, it gives that kind of focus for new people to rally around. It's that kind of Galactico team who people are like, oh, I can support this team, even though, yeah, whatever supporting in cycling. So I don't know. I think it's good and bad. But I just think that as somebody who's watched the sport for a bit, like over a decade, I'm currently not enjoying it too much. But yeah, that's kind of my soft way of explaining it, I guess, but without causing an absolute crash in the comments.
In sport, a lot of the time it is based off your natural strength. This is a team that is genuinely the best in the sport. They get the best out of their talents. They push the boundaries. I mean, whether it's diet plans, whether it's clothing, whether it's all this, they do stuff that is different to other teams, and it definitely pays off. UAE is the only team that really comes close, and I still feel like UAE are a little bit maverick at points, but they definitely have the talent to rival them. In the World Tour points, I mean, UAE have kind of shown that they can rival them, but in terms of those big victories, Jumbo Visma just seem to scoop them up in a way. And this year, I think they've really stepped up to the plate with the three Grand Tour victories they're probably going to get, with 99.9% sure that they are going to get. It definitely shows that they are the strongest. I don't think we should penalize them just because they're so talented. But we don't have all these teams sort of fighting for it, a bit like in 2019, where it was a little bit more sort of a free-for-all. Now it seems like we really do have like a sort of bipolar world. It's like the Cold War, where we have like UAE and Jumbo Visma really pushing at it, and Jumbo Visma just seem to be dominating that little bit more at the moment. I think it could definitely change in the years to come. But what is worrying? I mean, what is worrying in terms of the sort of the health of cycling democracy is the fact that Jumbo Visma's development team is disgustingly good, and
Yeah, I
they're
was gonna
bringing
make
in
that point as well. Because like Sky, Ineos, they never really had the official. We've talked about that quite a lot of time, and they really do snap up the talents. We saw it last year. They had guys on the podium in the Total Avenir, so like they are pushing the guys forward. And when you look at it, Sepp Kuss, when they snapped him up from rally, was not a world beater. Jonas Vingegaard was kind of snapped up because of an incredible KOM performance down in Spain. Well, one of the factors. And then you had like Primoz Roglic. He was winning the Tour of Azerbaijan for a Conti team before he was snapped up. So they're not Wout van Aert was probably the biggest talent, but like look at the ones they're bringing in: Dylan Ball, Wilco Kelderman, from their rival teams. They're letting these guys go, and now they're just kind of domestique roles or like semi-leaders sometimes. But the other teams are letting these incredible riders go to Jumbo-Visma, which is insane when you think about it.
But that's like Team Sky almost in like the mid
Exactly,
2010s,
yeah.
where
Look at
Astana
the
let
2012
Mikel Landa
Team
go.
Sky. You had Mick Rogers, a top 10 finisher. You had Richie Porte. It just gets crazy.
Matteo Jorgensen's moving over to the squad. And he said actually in a really interesting interview this week that he'd rather work for a leader than finish eighth. And he understood and acknowledged the fact that people were annoyed that he was going to Jumbo Visma, to the big like super team mega god of the sport almost.
The formation of his team hasn't been, like you guys were saying, about kind of where the main guys have come from. It hasn't been an overnight development. It's been in the pipeline for quite a while. You know, like you were saying, like Roglic, like Jonas, like Kuss, like this wasn't a team which was dominating 5 years ago even. Like it really kind of came about. Like, you remember like 2017, I remember Roglic winning a stage of the Tour, going over the Galibier. Then 2018 he finished fourth, and he was kind of like their focus point. And it's really built over the years. And like you said, you and that kind of swap over point where Jumbo Visma and UAE were really competitive against each other was really good. I feel like this year, the fact that Pogacar obviously had that focus on one-day races and therefore wasn't as dominant in the Tour because of his lack of, well, impaired preparation, maybe that sort of exemplified this Jumbo dominance. And, you know, maybe the Tour would have been a bit closer and perhaps we would have been a bit mentally more refreshed about this Jumbo-Visma dominance right now if Pogacar was a little bit more competitive during the Tour. But the thing that gives solace to me is that Sky's dominance didn't last forever, and therefore Jumbo-Visma will cease to dominate at some point. You know, them and UAE, like you're saying, you and they're just bashing heads right now. But you know, I live for the cycling. I know a lot of people do, where it's kind of like the underdog wins, and I'm kind of wanting a bit more about. I think that's why there's quite a lot of support for Remco actually right now, despite his quite polarizing opinion. People are quite liking supporting Remco now, just because he doesn't have that big team support, and he is just on a different team to the two super teams, and therefore he is touted as an underdog in that sense. I think the dominance right now is just, it'll end at some point. It might be years from now, but I reckon it'll stop eventually. Other teams will catch up, I hope. That's the thing that keeps me going.
Would you intervene though? Because like in basketball, they have this thing where you have a cost cap, so you can only have one big star in your team.
Intervene.
But cycling is so fragile with money and sponsors, and going up and down, and BMC never happens anymore, etc.
But in cycling, money is not very transparent. Like we don't know how much people are getting paid. Like, for instance, at Age des Citroën, Bernard Cosnefroy is fairly likely to be one of the top three most paid people at that squad. Like, I think it's hard to sort of forecast a future where we can actually see that legitimately being put in place. And we've had such wealth divides in cycling before, and I think that is only going to continue. And with Jumbo-Visma, there's a certain Saudi urban development project that is rumored to be joining the team next year to take over the mantle of Jumbo as title sponsor. And we know what happens usually when Middle Eastern millionaires get involved in sports teams. That probably means that the dominance is going to continue.
I mean, going back to what you were saying, Scott, yeah, I would, you know, if cycling does continue in this way and more sponsorship does come in, maybe because people see, maybe, I don't know, somehow seeing it being more of a promising avenue for sponsorship, I would like to see more of a cap on stuff, because like otherwise we're just going to be ending up with just a decade of one team dominating, and like nobody wants that. Like, I don't care if you're the most diehard Jumbo-Visma fan. If you're a fan of cycling, you will not want a team, just one team dominating for a decade, because it's just no fun, is it? To be honest with you, it's predictable, and cycling isn't designed to be a predictable sport. It's designed for panache and, you know, those gusto moves, and hopefully we kind of retain that a little bit moving forwards with the sport.
2031, when Jonas Vingegaard wins his 10th Tour de France title. No one. Okay, just me then. I would be fine with that.